3 weeks had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Council. Captain Sunho Choi stood on the bridge of his cargo ship Determination, watching the stars streak past through hyperspace. His sister Yuna worked at the engineering station, her fingers flying over the controls as she made adjustments to their new defensive systems. "Jump complete," announced the navigation officer. "We're now in the Kepler sector, outside Council space." Sunho nodded. The Kepler sector was home to dozens of independent worlds that the Council ignored. Poor planets with struggling colonies and small populations. Places that didn't matter to the great powers. Places that were desperate for trade. "Incoming transmission." "Captain," reported the communications officer. "It's from New Harmony Station." "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a thin human woman with worry lines around her eyes. Station Administrator Chen looked tired. "Captain Choi, thank the stars you're here. We've been waiting for supplies for 2 months. The Council traders never came." "That's why we're here," Sunho replied. "The Council thinks they can starve the independent worlds into submission. They're wrong." Behind him, Yuna looked up from her work. "Defensive systems are online, brother. If Council ships show up, we'll be ready." The administrator's eyes widened. "You expect trouble?" "The Council doesn't like humans trading outside their control," Sunho explained. "But they'll have to catch us first." 2 hours later, the Determination docked at New Harmony Station. The cargo hold opened to reveal something the station hadn't seen in months: fresh food, medical supplies, manufacturing equipment, and raw materials. Things the Council had been restricting to force the independent worlds back into line, The cargo was unloaded. Sunho met with local traders and station officials. What he heard made him angry. The Council wasn't just restricting trade, they were actively punishing any world that showed independence. "They cut our communication relays 3 weeks ago," explained Trader Beck, a grizzled old spacer. "Said it was for maintenance. We can barely talk to the next system over." "And the medical supplies?" asked Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's chief. "Medical officer. Delayed indefinitely," Beck replied bitterly. "Some excuse about shipping lane security. People are dying because these aliens want to prove a point." Sunho shared a look with his sister. This was exactly what they'd expected. The Council was showing its true nature. Without the pretense of diplomacy, they were revealing themselves as the tyrants humanity had always claimed them to be. "What if I told you we could set up a direct trade route?" Sunho asked. "Human ships, carrying goods between independent worlds. No Council involvement." The room went quiet. Then Beck started laughing. "Son, that sounds great, but the Council Navy would blast you out of space the moment you tried." "Let them try," Yuna said quietly. Something in her tone made everyone look at her. The young engineer didn't look like much, small, thin, with grease stains on her coveralls. But her eyes held confidence that seemed impossible. "The humans have been busy the last 3 weeks," Sunho explained. "While the Council argues about what to do with us, we've been preparing. Every human ship now carries military-grade shields and weapons. Every human colony has been fortified. We're not the helpless farmers the Council thinks we are." Meanwhile, in the core systems, the Council was discovering the price of their arrogance. Trader Yunho Nam sat in his office on Kepler Station, watching the commodity prices on his screens with satisfaction. Food prices in the core systems had jumped 30% in 2 weeks. Medical supplies were up 40%. Luxury goods from human colonies were simply unavailable at any price. "Sir," his assistant knocked on the door. "There's another delegation from the Zilani Collective here. They want to negotiate for grain shipments." Junho smiled. "Tell them the same thing I told the Vorthak delegation yesterday. Human traders deal only with free worlds now. If they want our goods, they can buy them on the open market like everyone else." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, they're offering triple the standard rate." "Not interested. Money isn't the point anymore." What the Council didn't understand was that humans had never needed their trade routes or their protection. Earth and its colonies produced more food than they could eat, more manufactured goods than they needed, and more raw materials than they could process. They had been trading with the Council out of courtesy, not necessity. Now that courtesy was gone. On the frontier world of New Busan, Governor Sora Lim stood in her office reading the latest intelligence reports. Major Do-hyun Ko, her security chief, had information that made her blood run cold. 27 council ships, he reported. 3 different fleets all converging on human space. They're calling it Operation Peaceful Resolution. Peaceful resolution with warships, Sora said dryly. How very council-like. Governor, our defenses are good, but 27 ships. Major, show me the real defensive reports. Do-hyun activated the wall display. What appeared was not the modest planetary defense network the council expected to find. New Busan and every other human colony had spent the last year building hidden orbital platforms, underground bunkers, and defensive satellites. The humans had learned from history. When someone threatens your freedom, you prepare to defend it, the Sci-Fi Council thinks we're farmers with hunting rifles, Sora said. They're going to get a very unpleasant surprise. Across human space, the same scene was playing out. Colonies that appeared peaceful and defenseless were revealing military preparations that would make the Council fleets think twice. Humanity had spent decades studying galactic warfare. They knew exactly how the Council fought, what ships they used, what tactics they preferred. The Council, meanwhile, knew almost nothing about human military capabilities. Back on the trade routes, Captain Sun-ho received another transmission. This one was from an unexpected source, Captain Vekth of the Rigel Consortium, one of the Council's allied trading companies. Human vessel, this is Captain Vekth. I have a business proposition. Sun-ho frowned. The Rigel Consortium was known for aggressive tactics and unfair deals. I'm listening, Captain. My company needs grain shipments to the Andorian system. Our regular suppliers have experienced difficulties. We're prepared to offer premium rates for discreet delivery. Discreet? The Council has placed trade sanctions on several systems that have expressed sympathy for the human position. We need supplies delivered without Council knowledge. Sun-ho looked at his sister. Yuna shrugged. Their money spends the same as anyone else's. Very well, Captain Vekth, but we do this my way. No Council escorts, no inspections, no questions asked. Agreed. What Captain Vekth didn't mention was that he represented the first crack in Council unity. Several of the smaller Council member species were quietly reaching out to human traders. The economic disruption was hurting everyone, but the core species were too proud to admit their mistake. On Earth, Prime Minister Seung-Won Bae sat in his office, reviewing reports from across human space. Defense Secretary Ga-yeon Kwon sat across from him, her face serious. The Council fleets are moving, she reported. Our intelligence suggests they'll test our defenses within the week. Are we ready? More than ready, sir. The question is whether we want to reveal our full capabilities right away, or let them think they have a chance. The Prime Minister considered this. Humanity had 2 choices. They could crush the Council fleets quickly and decisively, showing the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. Or they could appear to struggle, making their eventual victory seem like luck rather than preparation. What does Admiral Jang recommend? Full disclosure, sir. He says hiding our strength will just encourage more attacks. Better to end this quickly. And the colonies? Every governor reports the same thing. Their people are ready. No one wants to go back to Council rule. The Prime Minister nodded. 3 weeks ago, humanity had been just another member of the Galactic Council, following rules they had no part in making. Now they were free, and they intended to stay that way. Outside his window, he could see the orbital defense platforms that surrounded Earth, massive structures bristling with weapons that no Council species had ever seen before. The aliens thought humans were primitive. They thought human technology was inferior. They were about to learn otherwise. In the depths of space, the Council fleets continued their approach to human territory. They expected an easy victory against a species they saw as upstart colonists with delusions of grandeur. Instead, they were flying into the greatest military surprise in galactic history. The massive chamber of Station Nexus Prime hummed with the voices of 127 different species. Ambassador Min-ho Kim sat at the human delegation table, his jaw tight as he listened to the same arguments for the 3rd week running. The aliens wanted humanity to sign something called the Sapience Limitation Accords. They made it sound friendly, but Minho knew better. Colonel Huna Park leaned over and whispered in his ear, "Sir, the military readiness reports just came in. If this goes bad, we're ready." Her hand rested near the datapad that contained Earth's real defensive capabilities. The other species had no idea what humanity had been building in secret. Dr. Jiwon Lee, the team's alien expert, watched the crowd with worried eyes. She had studied these creatures for years. The tall gray Vorthak with their sharp teeth and cold eyes. The floating Zilani who spoke in musical tones but thought like computers. Dozens of other races, all united in one thing: they feared humans. Motion is simple, announced Counselor Vexathara of the Vorthak hegemony. His voice boomed across the chamber through the translation system. Humanity must accept limits on their expansion, no more than 50 colonies, no military ships larger than cruiser class, and monitoring stations on all human worlds to ensure compliance. A wave of agreement rippled through the alien delegates. The bird-like Keth chirped their approval. The slug-like Mordani slapped their tentacles on their desks. Even the usually neutral Federation of Rings nodded their many heads in unison. Minho felt his temper rising. 3 weeks of this. 3 weeks of being treated like children who couldn't be trusted with sharp objects. "And what do humans get in return?" he asked, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Vexathera's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile on a human face. On a Vorthak, it looked like a threat. "You get to remain part of the Galactic Council. You get our protection and our trade routes. Is that not enough?" "Protection from what?" Colonel Park asked, standing up slowly. She was not a tall woman, but something in her posture made several aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. "We've never asked for protection. We've never needed it." The Zilani representative, a floating crystal being called Harmonious Note of Distant Stars, chimed in with its musical voice. "Your species expands too quickly. In 50 years you have claimed more territory than most races claim in 500. This disrupts the natural order." Dr. Lee couldn't help herself. "Natural order? You mean the order where the same 5 species have controlled the galaxy for 1,000 years while everyone else begs for scraps?" A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Several smaller species delegates looked at each other with wide eyes. The human had said what many of them thought but never dared to speak. Vexathara's voice turned sharp. "Humanity thinks it knows better than civilizations that mastered space travel before your species discovered fire. You are children playing with weapons you do not understand." "Children?" Minho's voice was dangerously quiet. "We're children because we build our own colonies, instead of asking permission. We're children because we don't bow and scrape to self-appointed masters." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some aliens demanded order. Others shouted support for their various positions. In the chaos, Minho noticed something important. The smaller species, the ones who usually stayed quiet, were watching the humans with interest, not fear. High Counselor Zeftos of the Zilani called for silence with a sound like crystal bells. "Humanity will sign the accords or face the consequences. The galaxy cannot allow one species to upset the balance that has kept peace for centuries." "Peace?" Colonel Park laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You call this peace? The outer rim worlds live in poverty, while the core systems grow fat on their resources. Independent planets get conquered if they refuse to join your voluntary trade agreements. Half the species in this room are here because you destroyed their homeworlds and gave them new ones as gifts." More shocked silence. Even some of the core species delegates looked uncomfortable. These were truths everyone knew but never spoke aloud. Minho stood up slowly. His team stood with him. Around the chamber he could see the reactions: fear from the Vorthak and Zilani, curiosity from the smaller species, calculation from the military powers. "You want to know what humans really think?" Minho said, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. "We think this council is a joke. You're not peacekeepers, you're bullies. You've built a system where the strong do whatever they want and call it justice. Vexithara rose to his full height, nearly 3 meters tall. You dare insult the council that welcomed your primitive species into galactic civilization? Welcomed us? Dr. Lee stepped forward. You tried to invade Earth the day after first contact. When that failed, you tried to buy us. When that failed, you tried to trick us with one-sided treaties. Now you want to put us in a cage and call it friendship. Your species is dangerous, shouted a delegate from the hegemony. You reproduce too fast. You build too quickly. You ask too many questions. And that's the real problem, isn't it? Minho's voice was steel. We ask questions, like why the Outer Rim worlds can't trade directly with each other, like why the Council needs to approve every new colony, like why 90% of the galaxy's wealth sits in 5 systems, while billions starve on the edges. Colonel Park activated her data pad. The chamber's main display screen lit up with star charts, trade routes, and military positions. Information humanity wasn't supposed to have. We know about the secret fleets. We know about the resource extraction quotas. We know about the colonies that disappeared when they stopped paying tribute. Panic rippled through the alien delegates. How had the humans gotten classified information? How long had they been watching? High Counselor Zeftos floated higher, his crystal body glowing with anger. You will sign the accords, or we will make you sign them. There it is, Minho said, with grim satisfaction. The truth finally comes out. Sign our papers or we'll force you. That's not diplomacy. That's extortion. The strong have always ruled the weak, Vexthera snarled. That is the way of the universe. Maybe in your universe, Colonel Park replied. In ours, people have rights. In ours, might doesn't make right. In ours, bullies eventually get what they deserve. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Every alien in the chamber understood it. The humans weren't backing down. They weren't going to sign. And they weren't afraid. Minho looked around the chamber one last time. At the arrogant core species who thought they owned the galaxy. At the nervous smaller species who had never known freedom. At the military powers who enforced the status quo with ships and weapons. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, he announced. Effective immediately, we will have nothing more to do with this corrupt organization. The chamber exploded into chaos. Some aliens shouted in anger, others in fear. A few small species delegates actually smiled, the first time anyone had ever challenged the council so directly. As the human delegation walked toward the exit, Vexithara's voice boomed over the noise. You cannot survive without the council. You are nothing without us. Minho paused at the chamber doors and looked back. We'll see about that. The humans left, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Wu Sung-jiang stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, watching the council fleet approach New Sol Colony on his tactical display. 27 ships, just as intelligence had predicted. The aliens thought they were about to teach humanity a lesson about defying the galactic order. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Admiral, reported Commander Taehyun Shin from his position at the tactical station. Enemy fleet has dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Let's hear it. The bridge speakers crackled, to life with the voice of Fleet Commander Vorthak of the Hegemony Navy. Human colony of New Sol, you are in violation of Galactic Council Resolution 847. Surrender your defensive installations and prepare for occupation. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. Admiral Jiang almost smiled. The council still thought they were dealing with a helpless farming colony. Commander Shin, signal all units. Execute Plan Revelation. Across the New Sol system, everything changed in an instant. What had appeared to be simple mining asteroids suddenly unfolded into massive weapon platforms. Orbital stations that looked like civilian habitats revealed their true nature as military installations. Even the planet's surface began to bristle, with defensive turrets rising from hidden underground bunkers. On the Council flagship, Fleet Commander Vorthak stared at his tactical displays in shock. How is this possible? Intelligence said this was an agricultural colony with minimal defenses. His second in command, A Zilani crystal being called Crescendo of Fear chimed nervously. Commander, we are detecting over 200 separate weapon signatures. This exceeds the defensive capabilities of most core worlds. That's impossible, Vorthok snarled. Humans don't have this technology. They're primitives who barely mastered spaceflight 50 years ago. Dr. Minjian, director of human military research, watched the battle unfold from her command center deep beneath New Sol's surface. Around her, screens showed every detail of the approaching Council fleet. She had spent 3 years studying their ship designs, their weapons, their tactics. She knew exactly how they thought, how they fought, and most importantly, how to beat them. Release the hunter squadrons, she ordered. Above the planet, launch bays that hadn't existed on any Council scan suddenly opened. From them emerged fighter craft unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, sleek, fast, and carrying weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Lieutenant Nari Bay led Hunter Squadron 1, her fighter racing through space with impossible agility. The Council pilots tried to engage her squadron with standard intercept patterns, but the humans simply weren't where the aliens expected them to be. Target their command ship first, Nari ordered her wing. Cut off the head, and the body dies. Her fighters' weapons locked onto the Council flagship. What happened next defied everything the aliens thought they knew about space combat. Instead of the standard energy beams or missile attacks they expected, the human weapons fired something else entirely. Streams of exotic particles that passed through the Council ship's shields like they weren't even there. Fleet Commander Vorthak felt his ship shudder under impacts that should have been impossible. "Shields are failing," reported his tactical officer. "How are their weapons penetrating our defenses?" "Because we designed them specifically to beat your shields," came a human voice over the communication channel. Admiral Zhang's face appeared on the Council ship's main screen. "We've been studying your technology for decades, Commander. We know every weakness, every limitation." "Impossible," Vorthak roared. "Human technology is inferior. Your species is barely more advanced than primitives." "That's what you wanted to think," Admiral Zhang replied calmly. "We let you believe it because it made you careless. Did you really think a species that went from ground-bound to interstellar in 50 years was technologically backward? We didn't advance slowly because we couldn't. We advanced slowly because we were being careful." Around the New Sol system, the battle was turning into a rout. Council ships that had expected to face outdated human weapons found themselves overwhelmed by technology they couldn't understand or counter. Human fighters moved like nothing the aliens had ever seen. Human weapon platforms fired with precision that seemed impossible. But the most shocking thing wasn't human military superiority. It was human mercy. As Council ships began to suffer critical damage, they prepared for destruction. In galactic warfare, disabled ships were usually left to die or finished off to prevent intelligence leaks. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. "Council vessels, this is Admiral Zhang," came the broadcast. "Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Injured personnel will receive medical attention. Crews will be treated according to the Terran Convention on Prisoners of War." Fleet Commander Vorthak couldn't believe what he was hearing. "They want to take prisoners?" "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the humans are broadcasting medical assistance frequencies. They're offering to help our wounded." This was unthinkable. In Council military doctrine, mercy was weakness. Prisoners were a burden, the wounded were expendable. But the humans seemed to consider the preservation of life, even enemy life, to be more important than military efficiency. Within hours, half the Council fleet had surrendered. The other half limped away in retreat, carrying news that would shake the galaxy to its core. Humanity hadn't just won a battle. They had revealed themselves to be something completely different from what anyone had expected. As Council prisoners were brought aboard human ships, they received another shock. The medical facilities were better than anything in Council space. Human doctors worked to save the lives of aliens who had come to conquer their world. Human guards treated prisoners with respect and dignity. Dr. Minji An personally oversaw the care of wounded Council officers. When Fleet Commander Vorthak asked her why humans would help their enemies, her answer spread through the prisoner of war camps like wildfire. "Because that's who we are," she said simply. We fight when we have to, but we never forget that our enemies are living beings with families and homes. Your leaders may see you as expendable, but we don't. The recordings of the Battle of Nu. Sol reached every corner of the galaxy within days. Not just the military footage, but the aftermath. Video of human medics treating wounded aliens. Audio of Admiral Zhang personally guaranteeing the safety of prisoners. Images of council officers receiving better medical care as prisoners than they had received in their own fleet. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity revealed its true nature. Not the savage conquerors the council had painted them, as not the primitive barbarians that needed to be controlled, but something else entirely. A species that could build weapons capable of defeating the galaxy's greatest military powers, then turn around and use their technology to heal their enemies. In the council chambers on Nexus Prime, emergency sessions convened as the leadership tried to understand what had happened. High Counselor Zeftos floated before the assembled delegates, his crystal form pulsing with agitation. The humans have violated every principle of civilized warfare, he declared. They used unknown weapons, employed deceptive tactics, and they offered medical aid to our wounded, interrupted Counselor Melodic Tone of Justice from the Harmony Collective. They treated prisoners according to their own laws rather than executing them. That's not how war is supposed to work. Maybe, came a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. That's the problem. The speaker was Counselor Softwing and Twilight from the Avian Republic, a small species that had never before challenged the council leadership. For 1,000 years we've accepted that the strong rule the weak. That might makes right. That mercy is weakness. The humans are showing us a different way. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the smaller species delegates. For the first time in council history, the absolute authority of the core species was being questioned openly. Admiral Zhang's message to the galaxy was simple and direct. He broadcasted on every frequency, in every language, to every world that could receive it. Humanity did not seek this conflict, he said, standing on the bridge of his flagship with the captured council vessels visible through the viewports behind him. We tried diplomacy. We tried negotiation. We tried compromise. When those failed, we tried withdrawal. Only when threatened with invasion did we reveal our true capabilities. We are not conquerors. We are not empire builders. We are people who want to be free to live our lives, raise our families, and build our futures without asking permission from self-appointed masters. If the council had respected that simple desire, none of this would have been necessary. To the worlds watching this broadcast, humanity extends an offer of friendship and mutual cooperation. We will trade fairly, defend the defenseless, and never demand tribute or submission. We offer partnership, not dominance. To the council, leadership, we offer one final opportunity for peace. End your attempts to control us, recognize our sovereignty, and we will be content to coexist. Continue your aggression, and you will face the full might of humanity united in defense of freedom. The message ended, but its impact was just beginning. Across the galaxy, on worlds that had been oppressed by council policies for centuries, people began to whisper about freedom. The council chamber had never seen chaos like this. Delegates from 127 species shouted at each other in dozens of languages while the translation system struggled to keep up. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Sol, the once mighty Galactic Council was tearing itself apart. Counselor Kyung-ho Park, one of the few remaining human sympathizers among the council species, watched the destruction with grim satisfaction. The Kepler Republic had never fully trusted the council's intentions, and recent events had proven them right. Order! High Counselor Zeftos chimed desperately, his crystal form pulsing red with frustration. We must have order! Order! Roared Counselor Vexthara of the Vorthak hegemony. Your precious order is dead. The humans destroyed it when they humiliated our fleet. Our fleet? Crescendo of fear from the Zelani collective rose higher, her musical voice sharp with anger. It was your fleet, Commander Vorthak, was your appointment and your intelligence that said the humans were defenseless. My intelligence? Vexithara's claws extended. The Zelani provided those reports. Your spies said New Sol was a farming colony. From the back of the chamber, a small voice spoke up. Maybe our spies saw what the humans wanted them to see. Every head turned to look at Counselor Softwing in Twilight of the Avian Republic. The small, bird-like creature had rarely spoken in council sessions before, but now she continued with growing confidence. Maybe the humans have been planning this for years. Maybe they let us think they were weak while they built weapons we can't match. Maybe they're smarter than we gave them credit for. Nervous chittering erupted from several smaller species. The idea that humanity had been secretly preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful farmers was terrifying. It meant everything. The council thought they knew was wrong. Meanwhile, far from the political chaos, Captain Yoonji Song commanded a very different kind of operation. Her medical ship Mercy's Hand dropped out of hyperspace near Vorth Prime, the capital world of the hegemony. The planet was suffering from severe food shortages after humanity cut off all trade agreements. Captain, reported her medical officer, Dr. Taeyang Moon, we're receiving multiple distress calls from the planet's surface. Hospitals are running out of supplies. Civilian populations in the outer districts are facing starvation. Any response from planetary government? They're refusing to acknowledge our presence. Official position is that accepting human aid would be collaboration with terrorists. Captain Song smiled grimly. This was exactly what advisor Jae-Hwan Yu had predicted. The council governments were too proud to accept human help, even when their people were suffering. But the people themselves had no such pride. Begin broadcasting on civilian frequencies, she ordered. Medical assistance available to all non-military personnel. Direct delivery to hospitals, schools, and refugee centers. No government coordination required. Within hours, human shuttles were landing at hospitals across Vorth Prime. Not at government facilities, but at civilian medical centers that were desperate enough to accept help from anyone. The sight of human doctors working alongside Vorthak medical staff, sharing supplies and knowledge freely, was broadcast across the planet's civilian networks. The same scene played out on dozens of council worlds. Human humanitarian ships arrived, wherever there was suffering, offering aid directly to civilian populations while bypassing the governments that had declared them enemies. The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Let the people see the difference between their leaders' rhetoric and human actions. On Earth, Prime Minister Seung-Hwan Bai met with his cabinet to discuss the galaxy's changing political landscape. Defense Secretary Gaian Kwan presented the latest intelligence reports with satisfaction. 17 independent systems have formally requested human protection, she reported. The Outer Rim Coalition has offered to join a formal alliance. Even some council member species are making quiet inquiries about switching sides. What about the core systems? Complete economic collapse within 6 months if current trends continue, replied economic advisor Min Seo-young. They built their entire economy around exploiting the Outer Rim worlds and skimming profits from trade routes. Without that income, they can't maintain their military forces or their standard of living. And our colonies? Governor Sora Lim appeared on the conference room screen, broadcasting from New Busan. Every colony governor has voted to formalize the Terran Alliance. We're no longer just independent worlds. We're a confederation with unified laws, shared defense, and common economic policies. Built on what principles? Asked the Prime Minister. The same ones we offered the Council, Sora replied. Democratic representation, individual rights, free trade, and mutual defense. Any species, any world, any system that accepts these principles can join. No tribute, no submission, no asking permission to live free. Intelligence Officer Young Ji-han activated the chamber's main display, showing a map of the galaxy. The old Council territories were marked in red, shrinking daily as system after system declared independence or requested human protection. Green areas showed the growing Terran Alliance, expanding not through conquest, but through voluntary membership. The pattern is clear, she reported. Every species that learns the truth about human intentions chooses freedom over Council rule. The only holdouts are the core systems and their military allies. And what is the truth about human intentions? Asked Prime Minister Bai. Youngji smiled. That we never wanted to rule anyone, we just wanted to be left alone to live our lives. But when forced to choose between submission and resistance, we chose resistance. Now we're offering everyone else the same choice. Back in the council chamber, the political situation continued to deteriorate. Councillor Vexithera of the Vorthak stood before the assembly, his voice filled with desperate anger. "The humans must be stopped," he declared. "Every day they grow stronger while we grow weaker. Their alliance spreads like a plague, corrupting the natural order of the galaxy." Natural order? Councillor melodic tone of justice chimed from the Harmony Collective. What's natural about keeping entire species in poverty while the core worlds live in luxury? "The strong rule the weak," Vexthara roared. "That is the way it has always been." "Maybe that's the problem," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Councillor Deep Current flowing from the Aquatic Federation, a species that had been silent members of the Council for 3 centuries. The whale-like being rarely spoke, but when he did, others listened. "For 300 years my people have followed Council law," Deep Current flowing said in his deep, resonant voice. "We paid tribute, followed trade restrictions, accepted limits on our expansion. We were told this brought stability and peace." "It did bring peace," High Councillor Zeftos protested. "Peace for whom?" The aquatic delegate's voice grew stronger. "Not for the mining world stripped bare to feed core system factories. Not for the agricultural colonies forced to sell their crops at below-cost prices. Not for the independent systems crushed whenever they refused to submit." "That's different," Vexithara snarled. "Those worlds needed guidance. They needed structure. They needed freedom," came another voice. Councillor Swift River Running from the Centaur clan stood on her 4 legs, tall and proud. "The humans are offering what we should have offered long ago, the right to choose their own destiny." The chamber erupted again as more smaller species joined the rebellion. Species that had been silent for centuries found their voices. Delegates who had never dared challenge the core system spoke out against policies they had endured for generations. Councillor Kyungho Park watched it all with growing amazement. The human withdrawal hadn't just removed one troublesome species from council politics. It had shattered the illusion that the council's authority was absolute and unchangeable. "Look around you," he called out over the chaos. "This is what happens when people taste freedom. You can't put that knowledge back in the bottle." High Councillor Zeftos rose to his full height, his crystal body blazing with fury. "The council will not tolerate rebellion. Species that break their oaths will face the consequences." "What consequences?" asked Councillor Softwing in Twilight, with surprising boldness. "Your fleets are defeated. Your economies are collapsing. Your authority exists only as long as we choose to recognize it." The truth of those words hit the chamber like a physical blow. The Council's power had always depended on the willing submission of its member species. Without that submission, they were just another group of planets among thousands of others. In the silence that followed, Councillor Kyungho Park stood and walked toward the chamber's exit. "The Kepler Republic withdraws from the Galactic Council," he announced. "We choose freedom." One by one, other delegates began to follow. First, the smaller species that had always been powerless. Then, the mid-sized civilizations that had grown tired of exploitation. Finally, even some of the military powers that realized the old system was doomed. By the end of the session, fewer than 30 species remained in the council chamber. The great galactic government that had ruled for 1,000 years was dying, not through conquest or revolution, but through simple abandonment. The humans had kept their promise. They hadn't conquered anyone, hadn't forced anyone to join them, hadn't imposed their will on unwilling subjects. They had simply of 6 months after humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, Ambassador Minho Kim stood in the observation lounge of Unity Station, the new capital of the Terran Alliance. Through the massive transparasteel windows, he could see ships from over 40 different species docked at the station's many levels. Vorthak traders worked alongside human merchants. Zilani crystal beings shared research with Terran scientists. Former enemies had become partners in the galaxy's newest experiment, in cooperative government. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" said a familiar voice behind him. Minho turned to see Governor Sora Lim approaching, her official alliance insignia gleaming on her uniform. As the first Secretary General of the Terran Alliance, she had become one of the most influential leaders in the galaxy. 6 months ago, we walked out of that council chamber thinking we'd be alone, Minho replied. Now we represent over 200 systems and counting. And growing every day, Sora added with satisfaction. 3 more systems submitted membership applications this morning. The former council territories are emptying faster than anyone predicted. Through the station's communication system, they could hear the daily business of galactic democracy in action. Representatives from dozens of species debated trade agreements, resource allocation, and mutual defense treaties. But these weren't the one-sided discussions that had characterized council meetings. Every voice carried equal weight, every opinion was heard, every decision required genuine consensus. Admiral Wusung Jiang entered the lounge, his uniform bearing the insignia of the Alliance Defense Force. Under his leadership, the combined fleets of the Alliance had become the galaxy's most powerful military force, but also its most restrained. The ADF operated under strict rules of engagement that prioritized protection over aggression, defense over conquest. Admiral, Sora greeted him. What's the latest from the border regions? Quiet, mostly, Jiang replied. The remaining council forces are pulling back to the core systems. No major conflicts in 3 weeks. I think they're finally accepting that they can't win this fight. What had once been the mighty Galactic Council now controlled only a handful of systems around their original core worlds. The Vorthak hegemony, the Zelani collective, and a few remaining loyalist species clung to the old ways while the galaxy moved on without them. Their fleets were depleted, their economies collapsed, their populations increasingly restless as they watched other worlds prosper under Alliance protection. Any word on refugee flows? Minho asked. Increasing daily, Admiral Jiang confirmed. Civilian transports from core worlds are arriving at Alliance borders every day. People fleeing economic collapse and political oppression. We're processing asylum requests as fast as we can. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The species that had called humanity dangerous and primitive were now begging for human protection. The civilizations that had insisted humans needed guidance were learning about freedom from the former barbarians they had tried to control. Dr. Minji An's voice came over the station's intercom system. Secretary General Lim, could you please join us in Research Lab 7? We have something remarkable to show you. The 3 leaders made their way through Unity Station's corridors, passing the bustling markets and meeting areas where the galaxy's new order was taking shape. Unlike the rigid hierarchy of council space, the Alliance operated on principles of voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. In Research Lab 7, Dr. An stood before a massive holographic display showing star maps, trade routes, and population statistics. Around her, scientists from a dozen different species worked together on projects that would have been impossible under council rule. What are we looking at, Doctor? Sora asked. The results of our 6-month economic analysis, Doctor, An replied with a smile. Galaxy-wide prosperity has increased by 43% since the Alliance formation. Poverty has decreased by 60%. Technological advancement has accelerated by over 200%. She highlighted different regions on the Y display. The key is cooperation instead of exploitation. When the Vorthak mining world started trading directly with Zelani manufacturing centers, both economies boomed. When the Outer Rim agricultural colonies got fair prices for their crops, they could afford better equipment and increased production. And the social changes, Minho asked. Even more dramatic, Dr. An continued. Educational opportunities have expanded to species that were kept illiterate under council rule. Medical advances are being shared freely, instead of restricted to the core worlds. Cultural exchange programs are breaking down barriers that existed for centuries. The display showed migration patterns that told their own story. People were moving freely between Alliance worlds, choosing where to live based on opportunity and preference rather than the rigid caste systems that had defined council space. Trader Junho Nam appeared on the communication screen from his office, on New Harmony Station. His modest trading company had grown into one of the galaxy's largest commercial enterprises, not through exploitation or manipulation, but by treating every partner fairly and honoring every agreement. Secretary General, he reported, we've just concluded trade agreements with the Centaur clans for their new industrial complexes. They're offering to share their manufacturing techniques with any Alliance world that wants to learn. This was the Alliance way. Knowledge was shared freely, technology was distributed without restrictions, and prosperity was seen as something to be spread rather than hoarded. The result was an explosion of innovation and growth that amazed even the humans who had started. Yet any challenges on the horizon? Sora asked. Admiral Zhang pulled up tactical displays showing the galaxy's current political situation. The remaining Council forces are consolidated around 5 core systems. They have enough military strength to defend themselves, but not enough to threaten anyone else. The question is whether they'll accept the new reality or try one last desperate attack. What does intelligence say about their internal situation? Minho inquired. Intelligence Officer Young Jihan appeared on another screen, broadcasting from Earth's Intelligence Center. Complete political breakdown, sir. The Vorthak and Zilani are blaming each other for the collapse. Their populations are demanding explanations for the economic disaster. Some of their military commanders are considering defection to the Alliance. Defection? 3 Vorthak fleet commanders have made discreet contact through intermediaries. Youngji confirmed. They're asking about asylum for their crews in exchange for intelligence on remaining Council capabilities. This was something the Alliance leadership had debated extensively. How do you deal with former enemies who want to change sides? The Council approach would have been suspicion and exploitation. The Alliance chose a different path. Standard asylum protocols, Sora decided. Anyone who renounces the old system and accepts Alliance principles gets full citizenship. No punishment for past actions if they're willing to help build a better future. It was a risky policy, but it was working. Former Council officers brought valuable knowledge and experience to the Alliance military. Former Council scientists contributed to research projects that benefited everyone. Former Council politicians helped design systems that prevented the abuses of the past. Captain Yunji Song's humanitarian fleet had become a permanent institution within the Alliance. Her ships carried medical supplies, educational materials, and disaster relief to any world that needed help, regardless of political affiliation. Even the remaining Council worlds received aid when natural disasters or emergencies struck. Captain Song reports from the Rigel system, Dr. An announced. The plague outbreak there has been contained. Local authorities are requesting permanent Alliance medical facilities to prevent future outbreaks. Approved, Sora said without hesitation. Add Rigel to the list of systems receiving full humanitarian support. This was how the Alliance grew. Not through conquest or coercion, but by demonstrating that their way of life was better. When people saw Alliance worlds prospering while Council territories stagnated, the choice became obvious. As the day's meetings concluded, the leadership team returned to the observation lounge. Outside the windows, the view had changed. More ships had arrived. Traders, diplomats, refugees, and new Alliance members. The station that had been designed to accommodate a few dozen species now hosted representatives from over 100 different civilizations. You know what I think about sometimes? Minho said, watching a group of young aliens from different species playing together in the station's central plaza. What would have happened if the Council had just treated us fairly from the beginning? They couldn't, Admiral Zhang replied. Their entire system was based on dominance and submission. Treating anyone as equals would have undermined their authority. And, now look, Sora added, they clung so tightly to their power that they lost everything, while we gave up trying to control others and gained more influence than we ever imagined. The truth was that humanity had never wanted to rule the galaxy. They had simply wanted to be free to live their lives without interference. But when forced to choose between submission and resistance, they had chosen resistance. And in doing so, they had shown the rest of the galaxy that freedom was possible.